Imagine this. The sun is shining down on a cloudless day. The perfect temperature and serene walk alleviates your stress as you and your spouse drink in nature's vibes. This peaceful long walk right after your morning coffee has become a staple of your daily routine. Business day, weekday, holiday, doesn't matter. Sounds great, right? Since going full-time, my wife and I have developed a love for long walks. Our son really enjoys them too. Nature has a way of calming nerves. However, a recent exchange between my wife and I needed to go public. You see, while trying to enjoy this early morning stroll, we found ourselves chatting through business dealings. Waterline issues, eviction standoffs, local governments bullying, threats of lawsuits, buggy software, and on, all found their way into our conversation. This walk was supposed to be a relaxing way to clear the mind to start the day. What happened? My wife chuckled. People desperately trying to get into this space don't realize they're just switching one job for another. But you've heard me say mobile home parks are a lot of work many a time on this podcast. So what makes this conversation different? One word. Liabilities. You see, we weren't discussing how hard we had to work. Quite the opposite. My wife and I really enjoy working long hours. Rather, we were realizing that holding on to a property long term, beyond being a limited partner, comes with some serious liabilities. Liabilities cause stress and can cost a serious amount of money, if not threaten to take your entire operation down. You want to know what no one told me starting out? What to expect when you grow big.
Warning. This podcast features the truth about owning and operating mobile home parks. The following program is not designed to be sexy. It will not hype you up on MHPs. Rather, this is a raw take on this industry and how you find your own path to success. Welcome to MHP IRL, Mobile Home Parks in Real Life, with your host, Ryan Norris.
Gary Vaynerchuk says the key to staying consistent is doing something you love. If you chase money, you'll struggle to keep working and eventually will quit. Nearly 6 years ago, Ian and I teamed up and I found my passion. Finally! I knew what I wanted to be when I grew up. We set out to grow to 5,000 lots. We set a goal of 500 lots in 5 years. We smashed that. We set out to be full-time within 5 years. We smashed that too. We pushed well beyond the limits of where we thought we could go. And we bootstrapped our portfolio. We had no money, no experience, and no network. Outsourcing things, especially up front, proved impossible, since every extra dollar either went to buying more deals or basic survival. Fun money? Forget about it. Title work? I got this. Database work? I guess I'll stay up late. Cold calling? You bet. Flash forward nearly 6 years later, and we have full-time employees, virtual assistants, and plenty of ways we can outsource activities to really grow our business. But now we sit on the precipice of going corporate. This company we all bootstrapped together from nothing now faces a challenge no one told us to expect or look out for, which is, we're too big. Chapter 1, The Corporate Threshold. I escaped corporate America because I hated useless meetings, soul-crushing work, depressing culture, and generally feeling stuck. When I left, I swore to never go back. I set out to grow a company to allow others to escape too, either through this podcast so you can also learn a way out, or to create a cool work environment for my employees. I guess I didn't realize that eventually I'd reach a point where I ironically needed to get corporate-like to grow. You see, we bootstrapped our company. We threw together employees, systems, networks, and a portfolio all on a seriously lean budget. In time, we won't be able to do accounting in-house. We'll need that outsourced. In time, we'll need a COO, as my time will be stretched too thin. In time, we'll be forced to go beyond reasonable driving distance from our house, since the opportunities locally won't exist anymore, or at least not in the way we would want them to. How do you resolve this? Well, you become that corporation you tried to escape. I remember the first meeting I had with my friend Mike Conlin, who I interviewed for Mobile Home Parks in Real Life back in January of 2019. That first meeting, Mike told me he loved sitting at about 5,000 lots because any more would become really corporate land. What I didn't realize at the time is that Mike had a killer COO in Chris, as well as a team of accountants, admin employees, and various other folks to handle the work beyond simple property management. I did not realize that the threshold for having to hire more than just property managers falls around, if not before, that 1,000 lot mark. And yes, that's even for a portfolio of stabilized properties. By the way, with our mentorship program, we have spoken to and even taken on consulting gigs with companies struggling with exactly what I'm describing here. You see, it's not just that mobile home parks are hard work. It's that they start to require human capital, aka employees, much sooner than you think. And those employees need training, oversight, and of course, money. For those of you listening in, working a job you hate, and still haven't bought your first mobile home park yet, this episode may sound crazy to you. Why shouldn't I just hit pause on acquisitions and just fix those liabilities, or at least limit the risk, and then just chill for the rest of my life? Chapter 2, the high cost of doing nothing. Tim Ferriss dedicates an entire portion of his book, The 4-Hour Workweek, to the pitfalls of joining the new rich. It turns out that chilling for the rest of your life is actually pretty miserable. As humans, we long for meaning and purpose and work of some kind. We also gravitate towards novelty as we grow bored of monotony. Yes, believe it or not, becoming filthy rich can get boring in time. Circling back to mobile home parks, let's look at Archimedes Group. Ian and I both escaped corporate America. We did reasonably well financially, and we could probably just retire on what we have now, opting for a middle class to upper middle class lifestyle indefinitely. But I'm someone that can't even take a 3-day weekend without getting bored. I couldn't even tell you the last time I took a vacation. I love what I do, and I love working. So, naturally, I don't want to chill. I want to work, and I want to help others too. What do? We bought more mobile home parks. And since we both love helping people, we took that to the next level with our mentorship program. Why do all this when the goal originally revolves around not working unless we wanted to? Well, we discovered we actually wanted to work. And now we sit at a place where we really can't walk away and do nothing without hiring several employees, which would seriously eat our cash flow. So we've reached a point where doing nothing itself comes with a high financial cost, not to mention psychological cost. Chapter 3, the next 1,000 lots. So while Ian and I bootstrapped our way to about 1,000 lots with our own money, on our own terms, the next 1,000 lots doesn't look that way. We won't have the luxury of doing the same. We would need to bring on serious outside capital. Could we get lucky like we did with our current money person? Sure. Perhaps we find another stud partner and continue to rock and roll, sans worry about investor calls, demands, deadlines, complaints, potential lawsuits, etc. But most likely, whatever capital we take on will come with some investor relations that will start to feel more like a job to a certain degree. Why not outsource that? That brings up the next point. Outsourcing. I handle all our accounting in-house. Rent Manager automates most of my books, leaving me to basically just reconcile everything once a month. Also, we write less than 20 checks a month, and most bills are set up on autopay. This will eventually break down. My time is not best spent as our accountant or IT guy or accounts payable employee. I will have to outsource that admin work, which will also eat into our cash flow, not to mention expose us to liability of potential embezzlement or hacking or all sorts of potentially negative things if I'm not doing it myself. So with likely not the same investor situation, a need to hire more, and all in all, more work and less cash flow, I guess the next question is, why? Do we want to become capital raisers? Do we want to have meetings, check on employees, worry about the machine we have built? Isn't that exactly why we got out of corporate America? Let's just say the answer to all that is yes. Well, then comes the market. Currently, we have scaled a portfolio of an average mobile home park size of 40 lots in a tight geographic footprint. That strategy will have to change. I will have to break into new markets, network hard locally, hire more property managers, understand local legislature, and generally speaking, do all of what I have built all over again and in new markets, all for less money and more liability. If I continue to push in primary markets only, then I will have to expand beyond to where I can reasonably drive. Or I will have to buy in secondary or tertiary markets. No matter which pivot I take, this could seriously compromise the portfolio. If I've built a portfolio with a certain strategy, then start buying with a new strategy, I risk the portfolio not having a consistent rhythm to it, which could hinder large sales or refinances. Again, the theme I keep coming back to here is the difference between 1,000 lots and 2,000 lots can be dramatically different. Chapter 4. Why not just stay put? Growing will come with more issues and less money. Selling could take my cash flow to zero. Why not just stay put? What's wrong with holding assets for 20 years or more? Mom and pops do it, right? In the long run, the following will require your capital: infrastructure, homes, taxes, wells, septics, power poles, fences, signs, trees, roads, water lines, sewer lines, etc. Where will that capital come from? It'll come from your cash flow. Whether you pay out of your distributions or refinance to have the cash, no matter which way you cut it, for a time, you will have to reinvest in your own property. And replacing a septic tank isn't a legit reason to raise your rents. This is expected of you if you rent the land. Ever had a tree take out a home? We have. Guess how much that costs to replace that home? you could be talking $30,000 or more, and you'll need that cash up front. So what about the homes? Well, eventually you will need to start replacing homes. Each year, a home gets older. Duh. Well, eventually they will not be habitable anymore, or at least they will be so old they will become eyesores for the property, if not just plain not worth investing in to rehab anymore. As I have said in prior episodes, infilling new homes can be really burdensome from a capital perspective. But what about the taxes? Eventually, you won't be able to claim depreciation as a tax shield anymore, at least not the way you could immediately after purchasing. While that may be subject to change with new regulations and tax code, what can be essentially guaranteed is that your tax rate for the property will go up too. Seriously, name a business that exists in which capital doesn't need to be infused at some point to make the business continue to be viable. Unless you go down the road of slumlord, eventually your cash flow will start taking serious hits, and you won't have the same advantages decades down the road that you do right at purchase. Chapter 5. Liabilities. Beyond capital expenditures, we arrive back at what my wife and I were discussing on that lovely early morning stroll. Liabilities. Lawsuits, power-drunk bureaucrats, evictions, fires, falling trees, storms, insurance companies dropping coverage, outside crime creeping in, government regulation, and so on and so on. Lawsuits will happen, period. Sure, most will be threats or layups for you, but lawsuits suck, period. Win or lose. They will wear you down, even the totally frivolous ones. Power-drunk bureaucrats unfortunately exist everywhere. You think you get angry at ignorant political Facebook posts? Try listening to clearly ego-driven, baseless power stick whacks from a local know-it-all with way too much authority. We run a collections business, so no matter how well you operate, you'll have evictions. Evictions just get tougher when someone owns their own home. See prior episodes for more details. Acts of God, including fires, trees falling, storms, will stress you out. Whenever the local weather warning comes up on the TV screen, I immediately text our employees and keep an eye out for texts and calls on our mutual Grasshopper phone number. These acts of God do occur and cause some serious damage. It is a matter of time if you own parks in perpetuity. Insurance companies tend to get in and out of this space with little to no warning. This can be really annoying. Back to the power-drunk bureaucrat, insurance companies can sometimes have overwhelmingly nitpicky inspectors. Outsiders inevitably will pay unwanted visits. In the last 5 years, we have had 2 shootings at our properties. Both involved outsiders. Unless you put up a gate and literally screen each incoming and outgoing person, you will always have unwanted guests disturbing the peace at your community. And worse, one could make a case against you for negligence. Even if frivolous. Again, lawsuits will wear on you, win or lose. Finally, as we saw in New York State, the government imposed rent locks preventing property owners from raising rents beyond a certain point. This severely impacted property values and profitability. While that may or may not happen where you do business, this could present a serious liability for long-term holders. Chapter 6. But you can't sell. While liabilities, capital calls, and stress grow with your portfolio, in theory, so does your cash flow and net worth. Selling would eliminate cash flow and potentially a giant tax event. But there's something so final about cash. Having cold, hard cash means no liabilities, no outsider stresses. Barring some calamity, your risk exposure sits dramatically lower than owning an asset. Also, if your goal was always to escape a corporate job, in theory, having enough cold hard cash could allow you to retire easily, right? The question then becomes, at what point does the post-tax proceeds outweigh the long-term cash flow? Well, that's a deeply personal question that only you can answer for yourself. I'll say for me, most folks I've discussed with this say about 10 years of cash flow today means sell your property. So if you expect to make $100,000 a year for 10 years, you would need $1 million post-tax to consider a sale. Does that get a guttural reaction out of you? Why sell $100,000 per year investment? The answer? Because you now have $1 million. While you may have needed to invest in something riskier with higher returns to hit that $100,000 per year in your first cycle, your second cycle, you'll only need to hit a 10% return on your money to replace that income. So in effect, you could exchange the same cash flows for less risk. In a purely academic sense, that's a no-brainer, especially if you sign recourse debt like we do for all our deals. The process I'm describing is called recycling capital. When you successfully invest and create equity, you need to either refinance or sell so you can then invest that created equity. However, in theory, where can you find that same cash flow? Shouldn't that come with the risk of not being able to invest at appropriate returns? This brings up my next point. Are you the right end user for this parcel of land? Chapter 7. The life cycle of the mobile home park. The story goes that mom and pops don't manage well and sport below market rents. So if you buy the property, fix inefficiencies, and raise rents to market, you profit. But the story doesn't end there. If you then sit on that property for 30 years, you too one day will become the mom and pop. So what does that mean? Who should the final user of the property be? Or at least, who is next? So if we come in, make the property more efficient, raise rents to market, then in theory, you will have achieved a market-enforced rental increase barrier. How does one break through that rent ceiling? Money. Lots of money. A free market might tell you that the maximum lot rent for your property is, say, $500. So how do you get to $600 lot rent? Well, you'll need amenities, or new homes, or some value above and beyond what your property currently provides. So while we come in buying from mom and pops who sport rents of, say, $300 a month, fix inefficiencies, improve the quality of the community, and then bring it up to true market of, say, $500, then who can take the property from $500 to $600? The answer is a private equity shop or larger scale syndicator. It will be an individual or group that's cool with, say, a 10% return. While we get pumped up about capital multiplication, they market capital preservation to their investors. If you are like us, and you have no choice but to multiply your capital, then owning your asset once it hits true market rents may actually not be the highest and best use for that property. It may be time for you to sell to someone whose capital goals dictate a completely different strategy. Batman the Dark Knight had a line that went something like, "You either die a hero or you live long enough to become the villain." Eventually, if you don't sell, you become the mom and pop. Chapter 8, Recapitalization. Eventually, your capital and strategy may not be the most appropriate fit for the property you own. But does that mean the best course of action is to sell? Not necessarily. If your property requires an influx of capital to achieve the highest and best use, you can recapitalize. A recapitalization can be used to replace old capital partners and structures with new. This new capital can be open to just an 8% return, or only a 5-year maturity, or whatever you negotiate. For the example I mentioned earlier about replacing $100,000 of annual income with $1 million cash to place into a less risky investment vessel, well, a recap can be exactly that. A property you know lacks serious landmines can serve as a less risky investment vessel for you, and you can possibly take cash out without giving up equity or replace recourse debt with non-recourse debt. Regardless, a recap can serve as a way to recycle your capital and bring on more appropriate capital to get to that next level. However, this too will come with some potentially serious consequences, some of which I laid out earlier. Chapter 9, The Life Cycle of a Business. My MBA venture capital class imprinted an indelible lesson into my psyche. That lesson? No business lasts forever. Eventually, every business dies. Even big ones like Sears. Even centuries-old ones. The 5 stages of the life cycle of a business include launch, growth, shakeout, maturity, and decline. Mobile home parks, in my opinion, sit comfortably at about the maturity stage. What does this mean? Eventually, we die slowly on the decline path. Well, wouldn't you just exit before that? My venture capital class littered me with example after example of serial entrepreneurs that launched, grew, and eventually sold out of their companies before worrying about maturity or decline stages. In other words, they bought from their respective mom and pops or started a business from scratch and brought their lot rents to market, so to speak. Then, when it became clear that the massive capital influx part would be the only way to get to that next level, instead of recapping, they simply exited. In short, these hyper-successful serial entrepreneurs take a company from launch to close to maturity and sell out for a serious capital multiplication event. They ride the wave of a company until its value comes close to plateau or decline. They are not lifetime holders. At some point in time, you'll have to relinquish ownership of your mobile home park. The true entrepreneur, guru investor type will time this exit at its most lucrative point. And I don't just mean the most amount of cash. That can mean to jump from one potentially demoralizing and unhappy path to the next stage in their life. So does all of this mean I'm recommending you sell at 1,000 lots? Or that Ian and I are done with mobile home parks? Absolutely not. This just means that hitting 1,000 lots gives you serious options. As for Ian and I, we could stay put, we could sell out, we could recapitalize, or we could grow to double and beyond. At about 1,000 lots, Ian and I simply sit at a crossroads. We must either graduate on, promoting ourselves to that next level, or sell out and move on to the next part of our journey, or find a way to discover peace with where we have arrived and stop growing altogether. Regardless of what we choose, this should be about what you choose. What do you want? You want to chill out with cold hard cash? Sit still with what you got and enjoy the income? Or grow to double your size and create that corporation you were trying to escape? 6 years ago, no one told me what this would be like. At the time, basically, no one would even give us the time of day. Today, you can listen to me as I go through this stage, live time, and can better plan for and think through how you'll grow your business. Let me tell you, this long journey provided plenty of soul-searching moments where I learned to love things I thought I hated, like accounting, and came to hate things I thought I would enjoy, like legal issues. Your partners will change too. If you asked Ian, I bet he would say he too grew to love some things and now absolutely hates others. I'm sure that doesn't stop after about 1,000 lots either. I'm sure if we sell, stay put, or grow, in time, I'll learn to love more things and stop caring for others. Don't just assume things and not at the minimum think about the opposite. Like if a partner one day wants out, or a partner wants to grow bigger than you want to grow. And above all, know this. You can reach out to me. 6 years ago, I struggled to get anybody to call me back. I had nothing to offer, and the market basically confirmed this. Coming from sales, that's actually exactly what I expected. However, one big thing I learned about myself along this journey is that I love helping others. I'm super happy to connect with anybody and everybody. You don't have to be like me from 6 years ago. I want you to find happiness. I want you to win. I want to help you see the world from a vantage point of reality, not hype. And most of all, I want you to be a beacon of good for our space, finding ways to help others and improve the reputation of mobile home parks. And you can do all of this by thinking through each step of your journey, reverse engineering your journey from reality and not hype. I hope this episode displays how your strategy will start off one way, completely flip on its head, and then flip on its head again and again and some more over the years. So after all of that, all those years of working, battles fought, properties stabilized, employees hired, what's my best advice about hitting or at least striving for 1,000 lots? Make sure you love it. Entrepreneurs make mistakes, but with the overwhelming amount of free information out there, you don't have to be doomed to making those same mistakes. You just have to find a consolidated version of the most important information. What if I told you I'll gift you all of my DD mistakes I've made over the years for free? Just leave me a 5-star review, screenshot the review after it goes live, and email it to me at my website, archimedesgrp.com. Afterwards, join our Facebook group, Mobile Home Park Mastermind. You'll find hundreds of other mobile home park owners sharing ideas, contractors, and deals. It's free to join, and we would absolutely love having you join us.